Welcome, everybody. I'm Chip Rogers, President and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Very excited for you to be with us today. We have a special program, really some top leaders throughout the industry and beyond our industry to talk about some issues that are front and center in all of our lives. We're going to have with us right out of the gate, Andy Slavitt, who is the Senior Advisor to the White House COVID response team. He's going to be telling us how things are going, and we're hoping for good news there, that's for sure. And then after that, we've got an incredible CEO panel that was really going to focus on cleanliness, health, and safety inside of our industry and out. You do not want to miss this. We've got Christoph Beck, President and CEO of Ecolab, also David Gitlin, the President and CEO of Carrier, and Peter Schalla, President and CEO of Delos, three outstanding industry leaders helping to make everything safer and cleaner. So before we get to that, I do want to say thanks again to our sponsors. I think we're going to have them up on the screen here. Look, the reality is that without these sponsors, these type of programs, they don't happen. And during tough economic times like we're all facing right now, an extra special thank you to those that are willing to invest in us, our industry, and our association. So a sincere thanks to Food Buy, Hodges Ward Elliott, and Spencer Stewart, who are making this program available to all of you today. Today, we're going to continue to focus again, as I said, on health and safety and cleanliness and kind of figure out where we are as a country. Every day, the news seems to change, not just here domestically, but internationally. And that clearly impacts everything that we do inside of our industry and outside of our industry. It clearly impacts travel, both domestically and globally. And here to talk to us today is probably the single best person that we could have to explain what the administration is doing and what the outlook is. I'm very honored today to have Andy Slavitt, who is a senior advisor to the White House on the COVID response team. He is the co-founder of United States of Care, a nonpartisan, nonprofit working group that is dedicated to improving the health care for all Americans. He was previously the former acting commissioner for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Andy, it is a great honor to have you with us, and thanks so much for all that you do.
Thanks for having me on, Chip.
So the American Rescue Plan, after lots of machinations and the politics that accompany anything like that, certainly of that scope and size, is now in place. It is the law of the land. I know that was a centerpiece of what you would probably describe, hopefully describe as the first major legislative step in tackling the pandemic. Give us a little bit of an idea of what that means for the country and specifically for vaccinations.
Well, it's good to be with everybody, and we start with an acknowledgement and a thank you of what a tough year everybody's had, and I know how much everyone is doing their part, and it is indeed going to take all of us to get us out of this properly. The president committed to really two things to the public: shots in arms and checks and pocketbooks, and within his first 100 days, in fact, within his first 60 days. Extraordinarily proud to have more than 100 million shots in arms, and 100 million checks have gone out to the public. And I think there are so many elements of that bill that are going to be helpful to bringing us back, not only stimulating the economy, not only protecting individuals and small businesses, but really helping us accelerate our vaccination efforts, which are critical, probably the most critical thing to moving us back along, getting our schools open, which is a music to the ears of parents and also business, because we can't continue to move forward if our kids are at home suffering learning loss and probably making our lives more challenging at the same time. So those are both really significant efforts. It is going to take those efforts and more, all of us working together to turn the tide. We are very much have an execution and operation mindset mentality, something that you probably don't associate with government, but associate with the private sector. And a number of us are here who've got experience both in government and the private sector, including myself. And so, I would say that executing on this vaccination program, which is a large, complex undertaking, getting checks out the door quickly, getting our initiatives out of these bills implemented quickly, is really vital to allowing us to come back more quickly. No one has to tell you guys that every day that we stay in this pandemic state, our economy loses billions of dollars and Americans lose confidence. So we are working around the clock to try to do that.
Yeah, there's no industry that's been hurt more than ours. We remind people that ourselves, along with airlines and cruise ships and live performance venues, were hit first and hit worst. And unfortunately, we're going to be some of the last to come out of this. So the industry continues to struggle, even though there are some green shoots of activity, especially as we head into spring and summer. I know the president had made it a major goal right out of the gate to get Americans, or at least every American who wants to get vaccinated, to be vaccinated by May. How are we progressing towards that goal?
Well, so when we arrived here, I think the first thing we needed to really do three things. One was make sure we had enough vaccines, which we did not. We're still in a shortage situation, but we've now at least procured all the vaccines necessary to vaccinate every adult. And we've moved the timing up from when we initially thought it would be end of the summer to end of July. And now with some of the partnerships and the help of the pharmaceutical industry and people working around the clock, we now think we have enough vaccines to get to everybody by the end of May, and to have everybody eligible to be vaccinated by the beginning of May at the latest. And more than half the states have already announced sooner dates. So that's good news. We also had to increase the number of vaccination sites because just getting vaccines produced it's not what you're after. Vaccines do us no good unless they're in people's arms. So we have to get them to people. And that also meant standing up about 4,000 or 5,000 new vaccinators, people, active service people, men and women, retired doctors and nurses. So really treating this like a big emergency that it is, and working around the clock. We turned manufacturing on 24/7, which it hadn't been. We turned many of the vaccination sites to be open around the clock. And we went from a place where we were vaccinating about 850,000 people a day when we arrived to now we're averaging about 2.5 million vaccines a day, which is a good pace, and puts us, we're roughly double the commitment that we thought we would be in. But still, if you're waiting for your vaccine, there's only one vaccine that matters, and that's yours or your family members. So, I don't think we can rest until we have actually done the job of getting everybody that wants a vaccine to have one. And I think fortunately we're talking about now, it's not quite, I wouldn't say it's under a month, but I'd say we are going to be in a space and time in April and May when we're getting there. Today, I can report that 70% of seniors have had their first shot, which is up from 8% when we got here. That's huge news because 80% of deaths have been occurred in seniors, and 1 in 3 adults has now been vaccinated with at least their first shot. And we stay on this pace, I think we'll be able to hit our targets.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like just a couple of weeks ago, there was ongoing debate about who gets put into 1B and 1C and all the different categories. And the reality is, just yesterday, for example, the state of Georgia, the governor announced that everybody age 16 and above is now eligible. So it seems like that argument happened almost overnight. Texas as well, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of things we're not used to in this country that we've had to experience during this pandemic. One of them is a shortage. So we're used to getting what we want when we want, and so it's hard for people even to wait weeks for something that can be life-saving. But fortunately, it's only weeks and not, years.
Yeah, well, one thing's for sure, if people want a hotel, they can get a hotel right now. So if that's what you want, you can get it. Speaking of hotels, how can we play a role? I know weeks ago, we made the offer to both the administration and to state and to governors all across the country to let hotels be used as vaccination sites. And I know that's taking place. Is there anything else that we can do to help further this effort? Because as you pointed out, rightfully so, the sooner this happens, the quicker we get back to normalcy.
Yeah, look, I think one thing that I've been incredibly impressed with in my role here since I've joined the White House on January 20th, is the extraordinary generosity and commitment of businesses people who are hurting themselves, saying our doors are open, our resources are yours, we are on the team, and I think that's a really good place to be for the public for a variety of reasons. For one, we've got a fairly divided country, and it shouldn't be the government, whether you're for or against the party in power, that helps you think about how to get through this crisis. It's everybody. It's so to see more voices, more leaders like yourselves out there doing things, pitching in. It's really encouraging to the public. It's actually people in times like this, it's harder to do nothing than to do something. And so contributing as you are is, I think, critical. There's a couple of other things that I think are important to think about, perhaps in addition to what you're already doing, and some of you may be even doing this, but as we have vaccinators, servicemen and women that are traveling around the country, to the extent that you have capacity, providing lodging for those folks is certainly a good thing to do. Secondly, you all have frontline employees, some of whom are at work, some of whom are not going to be able to work for a while, but they're going to be coming back. Getting the messages to them that they ought to get vaccinated as soon as it's their turn. And we've found a lot of companies doing some innovative things to provide some incentives, simple things like offering a day of paid time off for the day when they get their vaccines, answering questions for them about what barriers they might face, transportation, others, questions, making sure they go to reliable places like the CDC instead of places like Facebook to learn about what vaccines are like, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we want people to get their questions answered. And some people are sitting on the fence, and we had to acknowledge and not make them feel awkward for having questions about whether they want to get vaccinated or not. I think as people learn about these vaccines, we're finding that people want to get vaccinated when they learn about the record of these vaccines. So I don't think it's about matter of selling people. I think it's a matter of informing people, wearing masks, and continuing to promote mask wearing, even if you're in a state where the governor has said there's not a mandate. In none of those states where the governor said there's not a mandate, if they said it's a bad idea to wear a mask, they may have a political point of view, which I may not agree with, which says that we shouldn't mandate a mask. Whereas, I think until everyone has a chance to get vaccinated, just out of simple respect for people who haven't had that chance yet, I think it's a good thing to do. So modeling that and saying, we're going to continue to do this until people have had a chance to get vaccinated, which, isn't going to be forever.
Yeah, in my experience, and I have traveled, frankly, throughout the entire pandemic, and I have gone to a lot of places, and I saw over time that it didn't really matter where you were, at least indoors, most people are wearing masks. Specifically in hotels, we made it part of our safe stay requirements for our entire industry. But even in businesses, your Home Depots, your shopping centers, most people are wearing masks, and that really doesn't matter which state you're in. That for most people, they're doing that, and that's good. I want to talk about travel, as I just mentioned. It is obviously the lifeblood of our industry. What are you and the administration looking for before you can give the full green light to domestic travel? And we'll talk about international travel in just a minute.
Yep. Well, look, one of our core principles here in this administration is to make sure that we let the CDC and the scientists have an independent voice and call the shots as they see them. And doesn't mean we don't push them to clarify, make decisions, et cetera. But, it's important that people get the message that we in the White House don't consider ourselves to be scientists. We're not putting our thumb on the scale. And therefore, when the CDC does speak, they have the authority that they should have for people to say, oh, they really are taking this step forward. And so they began a process which I would call less of an on-off switch and more of a dial. They began that a few weeks ago by essentially saying that vaccinated people could visit safely with unvaccinated people without a mask, so long as people weren't high risk. And I think you should look at that really as the beginning of a roadmap to additional scenarios. And I think they're going to look at what is going on in the environment as they make that decision. I think, candidly, they're very worried about kind of the spring break and what may come after spring break. If you look at the history of this disease in our country, you can just map it to Easter, Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, go a few weeks later, and you see extraordinary growth. Now, when everybody's vaccinated, that'll be fine. Or when the preponderance of people are even vaccinated, that'll be less worrisome. But right now, seeing the record travel days and what that means, a couple of things that it didn't mean before, which is this is how the variants go from being isolated in a small town in South Carolina to going to being in Miami, back to being in all over the country quite rapidly. And so this will very likely mean that we will see some steps backwards before we go forward, in that we will see these very highly contagious variants that people are reading about with the fun names like B11, they need B117, et cetera, et cetera. They need marketing agents because these are terrible names. But these I think if we were able to get through a short period of time and vaccinate people without spreading the variants, I think we would be more optimistic that we would be sooner. I think it'll remain to be seen whether this travel over spring break over the course of April, what this amounts to, and whether or not the lifting of the mask mandates in some states also makes a difference. I think if we get, what I would tell you from my conversations with them, and again, it's all up to them, of course, is that if we get through this period and we continue to vaccinate people at the rate we are, wherever we stand right there, we should be in a position where things are going to continue to get better and better and better. But I think people are nervous about the next month for reasons that we all remember.
Given the pace of vaccinations, and I know the goal was to get to 3 million daily by the end of March, and we certainly seem to be approaching that, which is fantastic news. You combine that with an increasing acceptance rate of the vaccine, which I think is important amongst the general public. And then you add on top of that, folks who have already recently had COVID and have the antibodies. If you put all that together, any projection on what that date looks like that we get to that point of herd immunity?
I think it's probably dangerous to project, just given the curveballs that have come from this virus. You're exactly right about the factors. And, we are sort of in the executing day at a time mode and controlling what we can control for. And the thing we can control for is producing and vaccinating the maximum number of people. The things we have a harder time controlling for are one of the things you said, which is how many people want to get vaccinated. We know that those numbers have gone up, the people who report wanting to get vaccinated, but they're still not as high as they need to be. So we've got a job to do there. So if we find ourselves in April or in May, where with a lot of vaccines and a lot of people saying, I'm kind of sitting on the fence, I don't know whether I want to get vaccinated, that'll extend the date. And it won't be nationally, it'll be community by community, but it will, that's the kind of thing that would extend the date. And of course, if the variants like B117, which is the one that's more highly contagious and is becoming an increasingly the norm, particularly in the Northeast and the Southeast, if that becomes more and more dominant, then that will also potentially slow us down. So I think we have, the good news is we have a lot of control here. If people make the decision to get vaccinated, if more people make the decision to wear masks in the short term, then I think, it won't be long before I think we can be optimistic, but we're not there yet. Tony Fauci said this morning, people ask if we've rounded the corner, and he remarks, we are at the corner. So that's a, for a scientist, that's a positive statement, but that feels like the reality.
Yeah, most of the time scientists typically follow that up by saying, but on the other hand, so in this case,
they're like lawyers.
Right. So look, I want to talk just briefly about the efforts that are being made to, I shouldn't say calm the fears, but make people confident in getting vaccinations. One piece of advice, which I'm sure you've heard many times over, it's almost like the follow the private sector world. When you see these commercials and they put famous people, I'll take during the basketball tournament, you see insurance commercials every 3 minutes. They usually have famous athletes on there, not famous politicians. So if we get famous athletes and famous people, like I know Dolly Parton did something recently on pushing vaccinations, those things seem to help. I remember seeing a news report recently where one of my favorite players of all time, Bill Russell of the Boston Celtics, had gotten his vaccine. That to me is the type of messaging that is appropriate and kind of moves the needle. So what else is being done to send the message to people that it's okay, it's safe, and by the way, you need to do it as soon as you have the opportunity?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, I would tell you we are going to do literally everything. Now, some things are more effective with some populations than others, and some things seem to be. So, well, the first thing we did is we asked people, what is it you need to know, and who is it you need to hear it from? And the people who are the groups of people that have, I think, the most reservations are Black and Latinx populations to a certain degree, although that's greatly improved. People in rural America, kind of particularly white males in rural America, that number has not budged. There's still a high degree of potential distrust. And then younger people in their 20s and 30s. And they each have some commonalities and they each have some slight differences. One thing is for sure, they are not looking to the government to tell them what to do. They are actually, and it's not even as much celebrities as it is local people. The local doctor, local pediatrician, local pharmacist, local people at their local hospital, friends that they trust, people that they know that have been vaccinated. And one of the reasons why the numbers have gone up is now everybody knows people who've been vaccinated and they can see the difference, and they can see that they're not seeing any negative effects and they're seeing all kinds of positive results. So over time, I think people will jump off the fence just as they see that and as they get their questions answered. The thing not to do is to make people feel stupid for having questions or to feel like they're somehow anti-science. That's not the case. In fact, these questions are, people have very legitimate questions. They deserve straight answers. What we have to fight against is disinformation. We have to fight against the social media because there's a whole Russian initiative, which is to take some simple things. They're showing needles that are like this long for people that are phobic and so forth. And so we really have to point people to the right direction and get the social media platforms away from that. But we're working extensively with, for example, church leaders. We're working with, in the case of rural America, we're working with the farm bureaus, and we are working with country music stars and basketball players and so forth. But at the end of the day, we hear a lot from people is, I don't want to feel manipulated. I don't want to feel like you think you can talk me into this. I'm putting this into my body. In some rural communities, they think that COVID-19 has been overblown. In some young communities, they don't feel at risk. People like me, over 50, you're probably not quite 50, Chip, but people like me that are over 50, we're not hard to convince. But people who are, in that younger bracket, it needs to be simple, easy, and clear for them.
Well, first, let's establish that I did hit the 5-0, but it's been a few years.
Nice.
But look, I'm really glad you pointed that out, Andy, that this is not a political issue by any stretch. And with any health decision that anybody makes, whether we think it's the absolute right decision, we should respect the fact that people have questions, and those questions can be answered. And so I really appreciate you looking at it from that angle, that no one's necessarily wrong here when considering what decisions they make for themselves, and you have to just provide them with the best facts.
That's right.
So last question. We talked a little bit about domestic travel, and I appreciate your perspective on that. And we're certainly going to see in the next few weeks after we get past traditional spring break what the results have been. But what about international travel? And is there an effort to work unilaterally with countries who are far along in this process, like in Israel or like the UK, who have done as good or even better job in vaccinations than the US has?
So, I think that there are an emerging set of topics that are that sort of fall into the sort of general broad category of vaccine verification or credentialing. So a lot of people, and this is not just for international travel, this is questions that we get a lot, I'm sure you have as well, from people who say, okay, I've been vaccinated. How do I demonstrate that? Or a business saying, I want to have, I want to start to open up some travel, and I want to do some things but for people who can demonstrate their vaccination status. Now, unlike other countries, this is not. We don't believe this is the province of the U.S. government to either keep or suggest that people have to demonstrate this. We do think that businesses, schools, universities, for travel purposes, the people will want that need. And the only thing we suggest is that occur in a way that sticks to a couple of important principles that always seem to work. One is that it's got to be free to the user. Second, that it's available not just digitally with a code, but also on paper for people who don't have access to digital. That it be available in multiple languages. That it be open source, i.e. that nobody's making money off of just creating this service, and that it be private and secure, because this is people's personal information. In other words, not a database that sits somewhere centrally that essentially indicates people's vaccination status, because I don't think people want that. But as that evolves, I think, and these are conversations that are going along on bilaterally, they're going on within countries around those conditions. And I think those types of things, in addition to probably the more important thing, which is getting the world vaccinated, and getting the world vaccinated as quickly as possible. Those are the things that are going to open that up. I wish I could give you a prediction of what that looks like and when those things start to happen. But there's obviously so many interdependencies. We're just controlling for what we can control for. We're being open to dialogue. We're being as aggressive as we can, and we're trying to keep an open dialogue with the industries involved and the countries involved.
Well, we appreciate that. And we've come to the close of our time with you, Andy, but we cannot thank you enough for giving us some time and giving us an update on how things are progressing. As each day goes by, I get the sense it seems and it feels a little bit better, certainly a little bit closer to the finish line. But as those daily numbers of vaccinations continue to tick up, I think it gives cause of optimism for all of us. And we appreciate your role in making that happen.
Thank you, Chip. And thank you, everybody, for all that you're doing, and also to your employees who are, many of whom have been gutting it out in difficult circumstances as well. So please thank them all on our behalf.
We'll do so. Thank you so much, Andy Slavic, folks. Senior advisor to the president and leading the effort on COVID response here in the U.S. Well, next joining me, really excited about these three gentlemen being part of what we're doing at AHLA, what we're doing throughout the industry, and what we're doing today on this program. Christoph Beck is the president and CEO of Ecolab. If you're in our industry and you've never heard of Ecolab, that's impossible, right? It's just impossible. So those two things don't go together. If you're in our industry, you've heard of Ecolab. David Gitlin is the president and CEO of Carrier, one of the world's leaders in climate conditioning inside of offices and buildings. And we thank David for being with us today. And Peter Schalla, who's the president and CEO of Delos, and maybe not the household name or the industry name yet that Ecolab and Carrier is, but I've seen Peter on his commercials with famous people like Alex Rodriguez. So that's really cool. And we're going to hear from him as well. And I've known Peter for quite some time, and what he's doing to kind of revolutionize indoor health quality is something pretty amazing and something we should take notice of. With that being said, I want to get everybody a chance to say hello. Tell us a little bit about, obviously, your company and what you're doing right now, and then we'll dive into the questions. We'll start with Christoph.
Hey, thank you so much, Chip, and great to be with you. And thanks for the partnership as well, especially in not so great times. Let's put it that way. So Christoph, from Ecolab, and we've started our journey as a company in 1923 with hotels. And 98 years later, we are still with millions of hotels around the world as partners, really, so to help our friends to protect and delight guests while making sure that the natural resources are managed as well as it can be. But what you maybe don't know about our company, because in 98 years, a lot has happened as well, so beyond hospitality, is that we have 24,000 people serving 3 million customers in 172 countries in 40 different industries as well. We help protect a third of the world food production, chance to be with the GFSI so this morning as well, with all the food and retail companies as well. We support 20% of the power that's been generated in the world, 95% of the nuclear power that's being produced as well. We're the largest water treatment company in the world, and our ambition is to, with our customers, to help save enough water for 1 billion people. And I declared that in 2015 at the White House, and we are at 700 million people last year alone. And we're one of the largest infection prevention company in the world. So in all places that we hope no one of us have to land, in operating rooms, obviously, well, we protect the surgeons, the patients, the robots, and all that's around the healthcare community. So ultimately, it's all the expertise that we're bringing together and that we brought together a year ago when this awful pandemic as well started. We've been working together to set the standards, the protocols as well, for something that nobody was prepared for and knew about. Obviously, we have 1,200 scientists that have been helping, so thousands of the employees of this industry as well, wrote programs as well, and put together this Ecolab Science Certified program as well, making sure that we could reassure you guests as well. So working together with SafeStay, which has been such a great program. So glad to be here and glad to be 400 years with this industry, not personally, obviously, but as a company.
You look very young for being David, look, air quality, even before the pandemic, was an issue that was gaining emergence for concerns of anyone working in offices or any public space. Clearly, after the pandemic, it's become an even bigger concern. Tell us about what Carrier is doing and how things are going.
Well, things are going great, Chip, and thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on the panel. It's an honor to partner with the AHLA. You know, for those that don't know, Carrier just spun to become our own public company a year ago, and it's really been energizing. We now think of ourselves as a 100-year-old startup. So we can now be much more externally focused, more agile, more innovative, more customer focused. We're really made up of 3 segments. We have HVAC, which you all know, and we'll talk about that with air quality. We have a refrigeration business, so it's been nice to be part of the solution of distributing the vaccine. And then we have a fire and security business, some brands that your team members may be aware of: GST, commercial fire business in China; Edwards is a real global business with commercial fire; Onity is a Bluetooth-enabled access control, so you can bypass the front desk and go right to your room. So a really broad portfolio, and we're trying to use that portfolio to help you get your customers back into hotels, back traveling again. We're really focused at the intersection of 2 key trends. One is around sustainability, and the other is around safe indoor air environments, as you mentioned, Chip. And our goal is, again, get customers back and give hotels the ability to give confidence to their consumers that safe indoor air environments are the norm. And, you know, you would never drink dirty water, but what happens is we actually consume dirty air all the time. And one of the reasons is it's not visible. You don't see that it's dirty. So we really have a 2-aspect solution. One is to make it visible, whether or not you have particulate matter, you have insufficient ventilation, whatever it is, too much CO2. So you can see that the indoor air quality is safe or not safe. And if it's not safe, use AI and ML to auto-correct any deficiencies that exist. We want to help you play offense with your customers to get them back into hotels by giving them the confidence that when they go on a trip and they're going to book a hotel reservation, they can see that you are at, say, I know we have Well, but if you take a Well Platinum or Gold standard, you would say, look, this hotel is at a premium standard for indoor air quality. It would give them confidence to book their reservation. And then to the extent it ever drops below the standards that are expected of your customers, it'll auto-correct any of those deficiencies. So look, exciting times at Carrier. This is a phenomenally important industry to us, like Christoph just mentioned for him, and we're excited to lean in to help you be part of the solution, getting your customers back.
I appreciate that, Dave. Thank you so much. And I just learned some stuff there as well. That's outstanding. And it is always good to be part of a 100-year-old startup. So great job on that.
Thank
Peter,
you.
you and I met a few years ago, and you sold me in like 10 seconds on this idea of healthy buildings. And when I think about how much time we all spend indoors, you spend hopefully 8 hours a night sleeping. You're going to spend 8 hours a day at a minimum working, and many times in an office setting. Maybe not now, but certainly we'll return to that. And most of your life is spent indoors, and you really sold me on this idea of a comprehensive health policy, a health plan for making sure that when you're indoors, you're in the healthiest position you can be in. Tell us a little bit about Delos and kind of your mission.
Well, thank you, Chip. Great to be with everybody today. And Chip, to the whole organization, yourself and AHLA, thank you for your leadership over the last year. It's been a tough time for the industry, for many industries, and you guys have done some fantastic work. And we see the results of that work as folks are submitting documentation for review, and they have done a tremendous job with your leadership. So thank you for that, and thanks for having us today. My name is Peter Schalla. I am the co-founder, president, and COO of Delos. Delos is a company that operates, as Chip said, at the intersection of real estate and the health and wellness industry by focusing on the effect that the indoor environment has on the people inside these spaces. We made an observation about green building, phenomenal movement, lots of progress, and the focus that green placed on the health of the environment, and noticed a vacuum in thought, this was back in 2012, on the effect that buildings have not only on the health of the environment, but on the occupants of these spaces. And so we embarked on a journey to establish a ton of research measuring the impact of anything you can imagine, indoors, air quality, water quality, light, sound, acoustics on the human body, and established the Well Building Standard in 2015. It's getting adopted globally now in over 80 countries, upwards of 2 billion square feet. And that is through our wholly owned subsidiary, the International Well Building Institute. So thank you, Chip. We do recognize that we're spending over 90% of our time indoors. It's important to focus on that. And then equally, at Delos, we also focus on the solutions and technologies that can be implemented into these spaces. The common denominator across the board is science. It's fact. What COVID has illuminated among many, many things to the world is two in particular. A, that our spaces matter to our health and well-being. And B, it is critical to rely on science and, in fact, third-party verification when you can in making health claims. And so we do that through our subsidiary, the International Well Building Institute, and the Well Health Safety Rating. As Chip, you did acknowledge, we're investing heavily in the marketing messages there to make sure that the public knows through our Well seal what to look for, because it really doesn't count, especially for hotels, if guests don't look for this or they don't understand what it is. And so we're investing in that, raising public awareness, and also working with the OTAs. Expedia is leading the charge there and illuminating properties that have achieved it. And then just a lot of work in air quality that actually started with the public school systems across the country. We have now deployed, over 100,000, helped deploy over 100,000 air units into classrooms, relying on the science and the claims and the evidence to make sure that they're the right ones. So thank you, everybody. Delighted to be here today.
So let's go in reverse order. I'm going to ask you a question that is top of mind for anybody in leadership, and that is, during this pandemic, what has kept you up at night? Now, I will say earlier in the pandemic, I probably spent more sleepless nights worrying about how is our industry possibly going to survive. And it's getting a little bit better. There's still grave concerns, but there's got to be something that over the last year has been top of mind for you that has changed the way that you look at your business and change the way that you look at the world. And I'll start with Peter first and go in reverse order.
Thank you, Chip. You know, when you think about what the pandemic has brought forward, we're happy to be part of the solution. I think that what it also has brought forward is a lot of folks getting into the wellness space kind of overnight. And there are some candidly reckless claims being made as it relates to specific technologies or specific actions that have been taken by building owners and building managers to respond. And when we're talking about a public health concern, it is vital that is substantiated. And again, that's the premise with which we operate. We look for the facts, we look for the evidence and the document submission to prove that. Can't tell you how many times I walked down a supermarket aisle and looked on the shelf and saw a product and how, you know, in Broadway lights, how much they're saying kills 99.9% of bacteria. And we know that the last year, at least in this pandemic, has been a viral concern, not a bacterial concern. And so it's the misrepresentation of fact that I think is very dangerous in a time like this, especially when the space gets a bit more crowded with folks engineering themselves into wellness companies overnight.
Yeah, that's a really good point. David, let's go to you. What's been keeping you awake at night, and what has changed with Carrier over the last year?
Well, what keeps me up at night is the criticality of rapid innovation. We have to innovate to be there for our customers. And people talk about returning to normal, returning to the way things were. For me, it's innovating to make things better than the way they were. So our job, we talked about, you know, with your industry, Chip, is giving people confidence to go back into indoor environments. How many times do you see people making restaurant reservations and they say they only will go to the restaurant if they could sit outdoors? We have to get people back on planes, back in hotels, back into indoor environments and get society going. I see it with my own business. We're now starting to encourage people to come back into the office. And there is something critically important about human interactions. Humans were not meant to isolate. Humans were meant to travel. Humans were meant to, you know, be with their customers, be with each other, innovate, be creative. So what we need to do to enable all that is rapid innovation. We came out with a new OptiClean unit last year that is HEPA filter. It's, I'll say, Chip, Peter, it's not 99.9%, it's 99.97%, I think, percent effective. But you know, it was granted a best innovation of the year by Time Magazine. We're focused on bipolar ionization, UV lights, better controls for ventilation. So as we think about more energy efficient buildings and you think about healthy buildings, there's an interplay there that is very, very critical that you get just right. And my big focus, and I think our big focus within Carrier, is to innovate to help make our customers not as good as they were before, but better.
Thank you, David. Christoph, same general idea. I did want to throw in one additional wrinkle for you, and that is earlier you described the touch, the reach that Ecolab has in so many industries around the globe, and it's been that way for a long time. And I know Ecolab's that giant organization behind the scenes, but now I think more people are focusing on who you are and what you do. But you know, trying to steer a ship of that magnitude in any different direction, and David talked about it, quick innovation, that's got to be difficult. How have you been able to respond to the needs of consumers on a global basis for the products and services that you provide?
No, it starts with your previous question as well, Chip, on what's top of mind. And we are a people organization serving people, companies like the hospitality industry who are serving people as well. So it's all about people. And when COVID started, was really saying we need to have our 45,000 people serving those 3 million customers around the world be safe, be healthy, be in a good shape in order to support our customers in need. And you know, we step back and we say, we're experiencing history. History is always difficult, as we all know. And we step back and said, we want to be proud with the way we will be shaping history as an organization, because we know people will remember. Our teams will remember, our customers will remember as well at the same time. And that's why we've said, you know, we will keep our whole team. We will pay our team the whole time. We will fund our investments as if nothing had happened. We told even Wall Street, we don't care about 2020. We're investing for the industry we believe in our teams, and for the future. We got R&D as well, so refocusing. When you think about what Peter was saying, so about bacteria versus virus kill, we've been working for 10 years on norovirus for cruise ships. We're all familiar with that. We've reshifted the whole R&D towards that product being able to kill COVID-19's virus. Ultimately, we made it, and we managed to have the world record less than 15 seconds, actually, so to kill the SARS-CoV-2. That was the entrepreneurship that we could only get to achieve if our people were in a good shape. And that's why, for me, people was everything, and people is still everything for me in order to serve the industry we love.
15 seconds to kill the virus. That is absolutely amazing. Congratulations on that. I've actually been and done a day-long tour of your headquarter facilities there at, outside of Minneapolis, and was blown away by the work, the research that is being done across the board in all areas of cleanliness. Just absolutely amazing work that you do there.
Thank you.
I'm going to stay with you and ask this question, Christoph, because the consumer, particularly the traveling consumer that we're so concerned with, they have a new level of expectation for what clean means to them. It's not that people ever wanted a space that wasn't clean, but now it is top of mind. We see all the surveys that we do. Following price, the single biggest determinant right now today on people booking hotels is cleanliness and safety. What are you doing from a global perspective to send that message to consumers that you might not have done just 12 months ago?
You know, it starts with understanding exactly what you said. What do consumers, the guests in our industry, obviously, truly think? And it's absolutely clear when we look at the facts. I look a little bit like a Chinese diplomat here, but it's quite mind-boggling when we see that 40% of the people are not confident to return to hotels or restaurants, 45% for travel, 59% for cruise, 95% want to see more cleaning, 80% are concerned about pandemics, 77% want to see hospital-grade disinfection in hotels as well. It was important for us to truly understand, because ultimately, as you said it, we want to have 100% of the people come back. The ones that are convinced, that's easy. The difficult part are all the ones that are worried. And like Andy was saying before, for the right reasons. It's hard to tell them, you're wrong. No, they have their fears for good reasons as well. And what has changed so for us, and it's a bit in the spirit as well of what Dave and Peter have been talking about, it's leveraging the power of our brand as well, Ecolab, that stands for safety. And working together with you, working together with all the brands around the world, we've been able to strengthen what we're doing as an industry and how we can convince the guests ultimately that it's the right thing. But we had to make sure as well that it was real, that it was not just numbers and facts, but that we had, like I shared with you, so those disinfectant programs that are truly killing the virus being used. And what's important is also knowing it's not just about surfaces, it's about dishware, it's about people, it's about air, it's about water, it's about pests, about everything, since we know that the infection risk is coming from the weakest link. Unfortunately, if everything's done right, but people do not sanitize their hands, well, it's not going to be worth much ultimately. And bringing it all together with Ecolab Science Certified, that we audit together as well, making sure that all practices, all products, and all outcomes are delivered as well, ultimately gives this reassurance for the guest that, like Peter is doing as well, so that we promote as well in the media in order to make sure that consumers or guests, when they see the seal, well, they understand what it means. And so far, we've invested about 50 million behind it in industry that was not exactly growing the last 12 months, but it's because we believe in the future of this industry. And short term, honestly, I don't care. We're here for you, and we'll be here for the future too.
And we certainly appreciate that. Thank you so much. You know, David, one of the things that has changed over the last 12 months is the science of what we understand about the virus. And at the beginning, there was a lot of discussion about cleaning surfaces, and in no way am I suggesting that's not important. It's critically important. As Christoph just said, even washing your hands remains critically important. But what we have learned is the incredible importance of air quality. And I know you've been working with Syracuse University, which, by the way, is the home of the Carrier Dome.
Yes.
And some amazing results have come out of the research that's being done at Syracuse that you're helping with. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's really phenomenal. When you look at the ability to really improve air quality, not only through ventilation, but filtration, we can have targeted solutions that get people, if you think about Peter's business, up to kind of the highest level of standards through very targeted solutions. Now, if you build a new hotel, a new construction, which we worked recently with a hotel chain in Asia, we were able to apply some of the learnings that we had through Syracuse to get to the highest level of IAQ standards and end energy efficiency. So if you're designing a custom HVAC solution, we use UV lights, electrostatic filters. We increase the amount of outdoor air that we brought in to better improve the whole indoor air quality. So installing new energy efficient, high efficiency, and better filtration chillers, we actually made the system 15% more efficient, but also significantly better from a healthy building perspective. When it comes to an existing building, what we have found is that you can make a significant change with significant improvement with relatively minor changes. We worked recently, Chip, with a ski resort out in Colorado. They wanted 5 air changes per hour. They were only getting 3. We found that the air handlers on the roof had stuck dampers. We replaced some of the valves, and they also put in some of our remote, our portable OptiClean units. We worked with a school in Chicago that had insufficient outdoor air, and what we found is that they had uncalibrated CO2 sensors. They also had closed outdoor air dampers. So all we did is recalibrate the CO2 sensors. We fixed some of the controls to better improve those outdoor air dampers. Significant improvement. If you were to look at kind of Peter's scoring system, it would have been a significant improvement from, say, a bronze to a gold level through relatively minor changes. Just get a quick assessment in, use our study that we did with Syracuse of what really makes it an ideal air changes per hour, amount of outside air, better filtration. You can move people up to a gold, even a platinum standard with very targeted strikes. Our goal is to put boots on the ground, inexpensive assessment, quick, seamless solutions. We know hotels are focused on the guest experience. We can make the air quality visible to your customers and provide very targeted solutions that get you to a very high level of filtration and ventilation standards. And I will say, Chip, I know you visited Minneapolis. You are formally invited to our headquarters here at Palm Beach Gardens, certainly an attractive place in the wintertime as well. And Christoph, I think I'm helping keep you in business as well. I know I'm sanitizing my hands about 50 times a day with Ecolab products. So thank you for what you're doing as well.
Thank you. You're a real friend.
Yes.
I was in that. I was down in your, as we say here in the South, in your neck of the woods in late December for a nice football game. As I'm anybody knows, enormous Miami Dolphins fan, and we beat the Patriots. Just wanted to point that out.
Great.
Peter, look, you and I, as I mentioned earlier, we were talking about let me rephrase that. I was learning from you about healthy buildings before there was ever the word pandemic, before we ever even knew anything about coronavirus. And you were on this pathway to evangelizing how important this is. And I could not agree more. Then you have the pandemic come along, and I think people really wake up to this. So what is the future of healthy buildings? Where is this going? What can we expect in the years to come?
Sorry, fantastic observation, Chip. Look, we have an opportunity right now. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic to get the broad mainstream awareness of the effect that these spaces have on people. But because of the great work that's been done over the last year, and because of the focus on healthy spaces going forward, I think we can look back 5-10 years from now and say, wow, do you remember when buildings were built, designed, and operated without considering the human condition in the first place? And there's a lot of good. There's a lot of chronic disease that can be prevented. There's a lot of lives that can be saved over the next decade, that we can look at this in the aggregate as something that actually was a net positive outcome in the whole, if we can shift that mentality and shift that behavior. It's interesting because we were focusing on health and the indoor environment for many years before the pandemic, and with the pandemic looked at the work that had been done and wanted to make sure that as we came to the marketplace with a solution in response to what folks were asking for, which is the well health safety rating. We wanted to your last observation, we wanted to make sure that that program was crafted not just to be responsive to COVID-19. There will be future, unfortunately, viruses, but health safety as a category goes well beyond COVID. It goes well beyond pathogen transmission. Health safety as a category involves so many more things. And you quickly pointed out that, rewind 1 year ago, everybody was running to the store for cleaning wipes and sanitization. And our virologists were telling us this is not just a surface sanitization thing. Let's make sure that we're crafting a rating system in the well rating that does describe health safety as a category and something that will have a much longer life than the pandemic. We look forward to the future as it relates to healthy buildings. We think that the opportunities for creating healthier spaces extend far beyond a response to pandemic and into opportunities where you can actually increase the asset value of buildings. You can increase the ADR and the demand driving to a hotel for these experiences. And we are thankful to be part of the solution and certainly think there's a catalyst. The folks at Ecolab, the folks at Carrier, I know you're doing some great work with Rachel and the team at IWBI on integration as well, and all of the stuff that you guys are doing at AHLA. It takes industry leaders like Ecolab and Carrier and AHLA to really drive change. And we have been there for the industry. We're starting to see those results. I will reiterate the point that many of the submissions we're getting from hotels for the health safety rating, their documentation is in shape. Their policies and protocols are in shape. Chip, because of what you guys have done over the last year, guiding them in the right direction with these protocols. And so we see a wonderful response. We see a bright future and a way to turn this into a positive.
One quick follow-up, Peter, and it's just because when you and I spoke a couple of years ago for the first time, you, as I said, you convinced me how important this was. And I know this has nothing to do with the air quality, but just lighting. What an incredible difference that makes in productivity and health for someone. If you think about sitting under lighting that is not good for you and flipping that narrative to sitting in lighting that supports you, how that can change your life if you're doing that 8 hours a day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just a moment on that. When we looked at the body of research that informed not just the well building standard, but just all of the principles that we're talking about today, the newest field of science was in lighting. It was just over a decade ago that scientists discovered that our eyes are vehicles not just to see, but also vehicles to tell our body what time of day it is. And that translates into cortisol production, melatonin production. Unfortunately, we as a society are walking around like it's constant twilight. We're getting far too little daylight in the afternoon, and we're getting way too much artificial light at nighttime, especially right before we're trying to go to sleep, whether it's our laptops, TVs. And the industries have started responding to this by creating modes where you're not exposed to that light. Indoor lighting, its effect on long-term chronic disease, productivity, helping to reverse the effects of jet lag, resetting body circadian cycles is exciting. It is a new field. If you go to the light shows, I think 3 or 4 years ago, it was all about energy usage. Now the conversation and dialogue has shifted to how can light be a vehicle for health interventions? And it's real, it's legit, and we stand by that science.
So we're out of time. Last question for each of you. And again, this we could go on for hours because this stuff is fascinating to me. But in our industry, especially when you talk to owners and operators, sometimes they look at things as fads. Well, that's here today, gone tomorrow. We know that this pandemic has changed life forever. In some ways, for the good. That's not in any way to diminish the massive number of people who have died, which we can never, ever consider this other than a tragedy because of that. But there are some lifestyle changes, some business changes, some health changes that we are all making that will outlast this. And in industries like ours, there will be changes that are going to stay with us. I'd love to hear from each of you the perspectives that you have on some of the changes that have been made during this pandemic that aren't going anywhere. They're going to be here for the good. And I'll start with you, Peter.
Yeah, excellent. I think some of the habits that are being formed, some of the burden that we're putting on as far as making people accountable for the spaces that they are obviously employing for guests and for conferences and equally in offices. I think it's important. I think that reflection is important. And I think, it's worth reiterating. We can look at this as an opportunity to grab onto some of that change and use that as momentum going forward, certainly not to diminish the hardship that this pandemic has caused so many people. But it is an opportunity at this point in time to grab onto the principles, I think, that have helped us see through the fog. And hopefully, knock on wood, we are getting close to the corner or turning the corner. But it's because of the change that was enacted over the last 12 months. I could not agree more with you that this is a paradigm shift. This is not something that will fade away. And ultimately, we're going to see that not only in social behavior, but equally on technologies and accountability as it relates to ratings programs that can give confidence to the general public that these things are being watched and that their health and safety is being put with the highest priority.
David, what about you? Something that has changed that is going to stay with us?
Well, Chip, I'd say there's two key trends that I think will withstand the test of time. Number one is visibility to, and as Peter was just saying, better indoor air quality. You know, after 9/11, there was an expectation that you would find metal detectors at airports. And after COVID, there's going to be an expectation that customers have visibility into air quality levels and that there's some level of AI, ML capabilities to auto-correct any deficiencies. We've never really had visibility into indoor air quality. Parents drop their kids off at school in the United States all the time, and 40% of schools have insufficient ventilation. So people are going to now start to have expectations that they can see it, the levels of it, the quality of the indoor air, and that there's something that has a control system to auto-correct it. The second one I'd point out is the interconnectivity of various systems to provide smart solutions. You take kind of our portfolio. We have a security system, a security portfolio on HVAC. Knowing where people are in the building, saying knowing where people are in your hotel, and knowing that there's going to be a congregation of people because of a wedding, being able to use that information to then pre-ventilate to reduce CO2 levels. If you take smoke detectors and fire protection, you can leverage smoke detectors throughout the building to put IAQ sensors in there to tie that into the HVAC system. So I think that interconnectivity of various systems, I think, will be a trend that's here to stay. And I want to thank you, Chip, for having us and for this partnership. And it's been an honor to be on the panel with Christoph and Peter as well.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate that. Christoph, you get the last word here, which sometimes can be tough, but but this is a fantastic topic. Cleaning, safety, health. What are the things that have changed that are not going to change back?
Many. I'm going to mention just one. 100,000 people are dying every year from hospital-acquired infection. And we've been, just in our country, just in the US, by the way. And when you think about that, less than 40% of the doctors wash their hands before they touch patients as well, so just to make it worse. And we've embarked 15 years ago on that journey as a company saying, we're going to help the healthcare industry reduce the number of hospital-acquired infection and saving even more lives, really by protecting operating room, it can be patient rooms, the public spaces, what they eat, what they drink, and so on. And what has changed during this pandemic is that all that expertise, all that focus that we've had on the healthcare industry has shifted to the hospitality industry, where the same people ultimately are suddenly thinking, well, the infection risk is something that can touch me in any place, not just in hospitals. And for us, that's been a major shift. And I think that's going to be the right shift in order to make this industry even better, even safer. And the thing that's going to stay, if anyone has any doubts about people, are they going to travel again? Are they going to go to hotels again? I'm a firm believer it's going to take some time. Obviously, people are going to travel again. They're going to spend more time in hotels, and together we'll be here to make sure that they can do that in a safe and healthy manner. So thank you so much for the partnership, and also for this panel, which has been a great discussion.
Thank you. Thanks to all three of you. And but more importantly, and I mean this sincerely, thank you for what you're doing to improve the lives of everyone. And your work is making a positive difference. So thank you for that. And for everybody that has watched today, we certainly appreciate it. It's the Forum Series. You need to be a part of this. We talked to the top CEOs in and outside of our industry, and none of that would be possible if we didn't have our sponsors, Food by Hodges Ward Elliott and Spencer Stewart. So we appreciate them for supporting us and supporting our industry. And until next time, which will be, let's see here, April the 14th, we'll have our AHLA Safety Summit. That's critically important. May the 11th, you want to be part of this. We're going to have a forward thinking series. featuring Jill Ellis, the all-time winningest coach in U.S. soccer history. That should be amazing. So a lot of stuff happening here at HLA. We certainly appreciate you being part of it. And until next time, I'm Chip Rogers. Thanks for being with us.